Hi, folks. I'm seeing everyone, a lot of people here. Welcome. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes before we get started. I see a few people I recognize. Welcome. So nice to have you guys here.
Me as well. This is so exciting. Got my teachers, my friends in the group, family. This is awesome.
You had a lot more friends than you ever realized, didn't you? Just going to wait another minute and we'll go ahead and get started. Is everyone able to hear us okay? Is the sound coming through all right? Can you see us all right? Okay, great. Feel free to put anything in the chat. Snigdha, you want to put the website in there as well?
Yes, I'm gonna link my website just for reference. You can find more info about the book there, more info about me. Oh, oops. Looks like oh, hang on. There we go. And there also should be a link to a book raffle in the chat as well. We'll be giving away 5 signed copies today. So do fill out the form and we'll announce the raffle winners at the end of the meeting.
All right. Well, as people join us, everybody, thank you so much for being here. It is my honor to be the host of this book launch. This is my friend Snigdha, who is the author of this book. She is, he started this project about a year or so ago, and we started working on this, and has really taken off in life of its own, and so many issues have come up along the way, in this odd environment of COVID. It's sort of become more and more important. So we'll get a chance to talk about some of this stuff. Everyone's free to ask questions, and ideally, it would be nice to have people on here with just come on as turn on your video and join us and ask the questions as comes up, and we'll go from there. So welcome everyone. Snigdha, it's so nice to have you here.
I'm so happy that we're all finally gathered here after a year of working on this project and communicating with you all through email and Substack letters. So I'm really happy to finally have this celebration with you all.
Tell me, the book is called A Case of Culture, and you see my own annotated version of it. And you talk about something called how cultural brokers bridge health divides in healthcare. Tell me, what is a healthcare broker? Where did the term come from? Is this something you came up with, or something that's been there?
Yeah, so a cultural broker, it is a relatively recently coined term. It was a term coined by this anthropologist by the name of Mary Jazzowski in the mid-90s. She's an anthropologist, and essentially what she defined cultural broker to be was, I guess, this person who serves as a middleman or a mediator between two groups of people. So acting as a bridge of information and making sure to alleviate any misunderstandings of when these two different cultural groups communicate. And so we see this concept of a broker in a lot of different fields, like say in the finance sector, real estate, whatever. You see this broker acting as a conduit of information between the buyer and seller. So you take that concept and you apply it to healthcare, and you have a cultural broker who's acting as this middleman between the patient of one culture and the provider of a different culture. And we see so often where patients come in and just don't really have a thorough understanding of how the healthcare system works. Maybe they're from a different country and don't speak the language. Maybe they have separate or very different and unique beliefs about healing and healthcare, and it differs from what Western medicine has to offer. So that cultural broker works to alleviate any misunderstandings, establish trust between the patient and the provider, and really acts as that source of information for both sides.
There's many examples of this you give in the book, and the impact of this broker is really quite varied, from just having a circumstantial something funny happen to really truly a life impacting changing event that can happen because of the efforts of a broker.
Right.
With all that being said, um, you know sometimes you mentioned that along the way you mentioned a um, familiarity breeds comfort, and that in turn leads to diminishing discomfort and better care. There's many ways of measuring it, and it's been done as such. Tell me, is this concept somehow overstated sometimes? Let me give you an example what I mean. Let's say a white person is in a hospital in Houston, and in Houston they're surrounded by uh, staff, including doctors, nurses who are Indian, Filipino, Nigerian, and very few people who are actually of their own background. Does that mean that they're getting worse care than somebody who has the same type of provider with them? I mean, help me understand that concept.
Yeah, so this idea of familiarity breeds comfort. I think we do have to recognize that culture is a very multidimensional concept. It's not just limited to one's appearance or one's race or one's ethnicity. There's so many components that fit into what culture is. So there's the language aspect, there's upbringing, there's religion, there's spirituality, there's familiarity with the host country, with the healthcare system. There's all sorts of aspects to it. Like one of my interviewers that I spoke to when doing research for this book, he said, there's more cultural commonalities between a Brazilian doctor and a Chinese doctor rather than a Brazilian footballer and a Chinese footballer. And goes to show that culture is than a Brazilian doctor and a Brazilian footballer. And it goes to show that culture really supersedes that the nationality or ethnicity or all of these sort of appearance related factors. And that really ties into sort of the essence of this book, which is that there's more to culture than what meets the eye. And so to answer your question about a patient, say a white patient who's seeking care in, say, a Houston hospital and his providers are of Asian descent. In that case, I do believe that even if they are appearance-wise different from the patient, and upon first appearance they're different, it's really this point that the patient, after all, is still seeking care within their own country that they grew up in, and the provider is, still speaks the same language, is still operating within this healthcare system that is familiar to the patient and to everyone involved. Whereas when you have the reverse, you have a patient who comes from a different country, doesn't speak the language, has no family, no friends here, doesn't know how the healthcare system works because it's so different from what they're used to, and is having to take new medicines that they've never heard of and that they normally wouldn't take back home. There's really a much larger disconnect. And so I think there is a difference between those two situations.
I see what you mean. So, culture is defined in so many different ways, and
Right.
if you're in an unfamiliar environment, and even though the others are of a different culture and they don't necessarily share your culture, but they understand and they share the system and can help understand. It can help bridge any potential miscommunication.
Misunderstandings, and right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's many examples of this in the book. You talk about one where someone tries to explain to a Navajo patient about chemotherapy, and the closest it came to was, "We're going to put a fire in you." That unfortunately didn't
Poor
lead.
guide.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's like
ran
a non.
away.
That's pretty scary sounding. So
Yeah.
examples are like that. There are many examples. There's oil bath where it was referred to a child who was getting oil on his body, and that's the only way he could explain it to a school person. That my mother gives me an oil bath.
Right, like in Ayurveda, in Hindu culture, there's this thing called Abhyanga Snana, which is, I guess, into English, roughly translates as oil bath. And this is a 7-year-old girl, right? She doesn't have the concept, like, I guess, the maturity or under level of understanding yet to be able to, I guess, sort of predict what those misunderstandings could be when she translates Abhyanga Snana into oil bath. And of course, everyone at the school thought she meant literal oil bath, that her parents were dunking her into a vat of oil. They termed it child abuse. And so there's so many misunderstandings that can happen. And yeah.
So let's kind of along the same vein. No, so you um, is it better, or does it make sense to have somebody um, represent a culture the way they represent language? I mean, for example, in the olden days, when we didn't have somebody who spoke the language as a patient, we would scramble to find someone in the staff, call upstairs on the floors and see if someone speaks that language, or try and
Oh, we
find
still
a
do that.
friend. Now we
Yeah.
have a language line. Is
Yeah.
there a role for a culture line or culture ambassador in a hospital or healthcare setting where you have such a diverse population?
Honestly, I think that's where we're headed, and that's where we should be headed. I mean, as our patient population continues to grow in size and diversity, and we have more and more patients coming from all these different cultural backgrounds, speaking different languages, carrying different beliefs about healing and health. And when those interact with the Western medicine that we provide, I definitely think that we need to sort of amp up our resources to tackle those misunderstandings when they do arise. And so I definitely do see that being a thing. I know in our clinic, we have volunteers within our community who offer to step up and not only offer language interpretation services, but also serve as that cultural broker and, be there in the room with the patient and, sort of help be that source of comfort for them, offer help to alleviate any misunderstandings, that sort of thing. With regards to establishing that in a bigger hospital system, obviously bureaucracy and a lot more,
Cost,
a
right?
lot more checks to get through, but I do think that that is a direction that we should be going in.
Now, there may be some uh, already existing mechanisms by which you can utilize. Certainly, in Houston, we see Arab channels and hospitals that have that population that come through,
Very cool. Yeah.
clergy on call to bridge the cultural aspect, the religious aspect of the various cultures, right?
Right.
And then there's social worker role, or even volunteers who are versed in a specific culture, who say, look, I'll call me if there's somebody who needs help trying to understand this. I'll be able to help you. That certainly
Right.
might be a consideration. Tell me, what is the auntie effect?
Yes. So for to provide some context, the auntie effect is this term that was coined by one of the interviewees that's featured in the book, Dr. Sirisha Narayana, who is an Indian American doctor, works at UCSF. And she coined this term to sort of describe this, I guess, what happens when she encounters an elderly Indian patient at work. So the story that's in the book is one day she was, her and her team, they were taking care of this unconscious elderly Indian woman, and they were trying to get her to respond. She's fully knocked out, unconscious. She's not responding. They try yelling her name in her ear, Mrs. Sharma, wake up, wake up. no response. Then they try doing a sternal rub. So you take a rub on the sternum to try and elicit a pain response to try and get her to wake up. Nothing, no response. And then finally, one of the providers on the team, an intern who's also of Indian descent, she walks up to the patient and she leans into the patient's ear and she yells, "Auntie." And everyone's shocked. Dr. Narayana was like, "What are you doing? Why are you calling this patient auntie?" But to everyone's surprise, the patient woke up and yelled back, "What?" And it was like something out of a movie. Like, why? First of all, it was just out of anyone's mind that you would go up to a patient and call her auntie, especially when they're just complete strangers they've never met before, no context whatsoever, right? But
Yeah.
the thing is, in the Desi culture, it's like second nature to call people auntie and uncle. Like, "Hey, uncle, how's it going? Hi, auntie, long time no see." Like, it's just a term of endearment that we use, and it really establishes that close bond and connection, even with people you've never met.
So
And that's
it's almost
exactly
it almost wants me to add that to my repertoire of things to try when a patient doesn't wake up. Try the glucose, try Narcan, try calling auntie.
right. Add that to the checklist, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's essentially like the auntie effect. It's beyond medical science, but somehow it works. And that really goes to show this power of cultural connection and the barriers that it can overcome.
Yeah, it truly does. And in fact,
Powerful.
um, it's interesting that often, at least on an observation, there's in India and Pakistan, they will often use auntie, that is young house staff will actually use that as the way to communicate with them as a primary rather than sir,
Wow.
Mr. or Miss.
Okay.
It's not uncommon. So I can certainly see it. I would love to
See
have,
a comment in
yeah,
the
I
chat
suspect,
box. I see
yeah,
uncle
uncle
also
also.
works on mails. I'm sure it does. I'll have to try that next
Yeah,
time.
that'll be another study we'll have to do though.
Yeah, actually, the
The
one of our patients, I actually talk about this in the book, but he insists I call him uncle, and he's like, "Beta, call me uncle. It's fine." I'm like, "Oh wow, it's just so touching, you know." Just
Yeah, yeah, it
yeah,
is. There's a certain sense of comfort, an instant rapport of sorts, right?
right, absolutely.
All right. So here's a couple of things one something I found fascinating in the book was there was a schizophrenic who had spiritual hallucinations and were considered a blessing, and the potential loss of losing those spiritual hallucinations was considered detrimental. That what if I stop having these spiritual conversations, etc. That I found that part of it fascinating as a resistance to getting treatment.
Right.
There's so
Yeah,
many more.
it's really fascinating. Like, this is actually my grandma's story, and so my grandma, she often had visions of God, the mother goddess Ammoru, and Ammoru would tell her to do certain things, like don't leave the house. There's a lot of germs. Stay home. Do shower again. Do shower third time. And like she would bathe a lot of times, and she would also just like a lot of, I guess, symptoms of what we eventually found out was OCD and depression, but like washing her hands all the time, not being able to get out of bed, and constantly cleaning everything and cleaning again and again, and getting irritable with family members and everything. But she went so many decades without ever seeking treatment, and part of the reason was exactly what you had just said. Being able to see and speak with the goddess is a blessing, and why would you treat something that's a blessing, right? And it really wasn't until much later that a family friend of ours suggested she go and seek treatment, and connected her to actually a distant relative of mine on my dad's side, who is a psychiatrist, and he works with a lot of Telugu Indian folks who are Hindu and religious, and he has that understanding of where religion and spirituality meets medicine and healing. And so he was really able to, help her find that balance between her health needs and her cultural beliefs, and really providing her that reassurance that just because she is seeking treatment doesn't mean she has to lose her connection with the goddess. And if anything, it'll give her the mental energy she needs in order to make the most of her connection with the goddess.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as a matter of fact, mental health is one of those very much problematic and needs somebody to help explain cross culturally in regards to treatments and so on and so forth. Um, excuse me. So in today's world, you got rampant COVID hesitancy, vaccine hesitancy, right?
Mhm.
Um, it- what role do you see for healthcare brokers to help bridge this divide?
Yeah, this is a very, very timely issue. And I honestly think that the role of cultural brokers is honestly more important now than ever before. We see with like amidst this public health emergency and just given so many of the factors behind vaccine hesitancy, be it historical mistrust of the government or of these scientific institutions, or maybe just this different beliefs of healing and really learning to incorporate that with what Western medicine and vaccines have to offer. I think this is where cultural brokers really play an important role. So like one example is, we have social workers who work with our minority populations to help them, I guess, help understand where their mistrust is rooted and really helping them find safer sort of non-federal options to receiving healthcare, to accessing the vaccine, and with regarding more spiritual and religious reasons, we have examples of religious leaders who are respected within their respective communities, in their sermons, explaining how and why it's important to get the vaccine because of the great benefit that it has, not just for themselves and their family, but their community at large.
Mhm.
And, really cultural broker is one that is able to not just sort of preach the facts, but really tie the science to the cultural beliefs, to the religion, to the spirituality of the people in that community.
That makes sense, I think you mentioned a couple of circumstances in the book where that in fact has been the case. That a lot of your book has in fact been references with the COVID episode and pandemic, because a lot of this happened and it allowed for opportunities and examples of where cultural brokerage, so to speak, is important. We had a few folks join in later, and I just want to say welcome. It's really good to have you here. My name is Hassan Gokul. I'm an emergency doctor. And for those who missed it earlier, this is Snigdha Nandipati, who is a young budding author. And this is your first book. It's called A Case of Culture. Um, as we're talking about you as a budding author and coming up with this really beautifully done book. Let me ask you something. You you don't shy away from sensitive or taboo topics, all right? So
Yeah.
examples, yeah. So examples can be, I guess, if you get to talk about the need to get an accurate menstrual history for someone who's afraid to give it, or discussing genital cosmetic surgery, or the story of the man without a penis.
Right.
As a young Indian author close to your Indian conservative roots, how difficult was it to talk about these things? I mean, how did this jive with your family and stuff?
Oh man, I've got family in the audience here. So, it was when I first heard these stories, it was honestly really shocking. Like these were stories that just aren't really ever shared, right? So when I did speak to these patients and with these cultural brokers who offered to share these stories, well, one, there's their vulnerability and their courage is simply unparalleled to be able to share these stories with the world and help others to learn from their experiences. And really, as an author, I feel that my role is to sort of give a platform where they can share that story and It was a little bit, I guess, difficult to write about them. I mean, I wanted to present those stories in the most how do I, yeah, I guess like in the most proper way, and really, yeah, make sure I represent their story in the best way possible. That being said, I don't know, I had a little bit of trouble getting folks to edit those stories properly, so that was a little bit more difficult to find. But I guess regarding my like upbringing and my beliefs and how that ties into those stories, I really don't think that it makes much of a difference. I mean, these are just as medical stories as any other story in the book, right? It's still part of the body, still deserves medical attention, still deserves readership and recognition. So I guess in that sense, there wasn't really much of a doubt that I wanted to include those in the book.
So it certainly makes sense. It's a good answer. Um, I'm gonna ask if anybody wants to chime in and ask a question, and certainly anything is open. I'm not 100% sure whether you can unmute yourself or I have to unmute you, but please feel free to let me know either through the chat or directly.
Would love to
Um,
see y'all's faces.
yeah, if you can turn on your cameras. Well, there we go.
All right.
Thank you. Awesome. So, is there there was one specific passage that really um, had me in tears at one point, and that is the story. Well, you know which one it is. Would you mind at least just going over that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this oh man, yeah, this is one of the most special stories I've included in the book. And this story actually was all over the news earlier in 2021. And funny enough, Dr. Gokul and I had both heard about this story in the news, and we shared the like news stories of this with each other. And it was at that point I was like, wow, okay, this is a powerful story. I need to include it in the book somehow. So I'll go ahead and read that story to you all. So this is if you guys have read the book yet, or if you have it, it's near the end of chapter 9 called Crossing Circles. Oh, sorry, chapter 10, Crossing Circles. In May of 2021, a 56-year-old Muslim woman called Bivatu was admitted into the COVID-19 ward at Sevana Hospital in the Palakkad district of Kerala, India. Bivatu, who was critically ill from COVID-19 related pneumonia, was placed on a ventilator for over 2 weeks. This type of invasive life support, where a large tube is inserted through the patient's mouth into the windpipe, is often used as a last resort to help the patient breathe when they are unable to on their own. When on a ventilator, the patient cannot eat or drink or speak or move. Sometimes they're even sedated to prevent movement that might dislodge the tube from the windpipe. None of Bivatu's family or friends were allowed inside to see her due to COVID-19 precautions. As a result, her doctors were the only ones to take on the role of comfort and support her family that they would have provided otherwise. For over 2 weeks, as Bivatu underwent treatment and ventilation, her son and son-in-law would come to the hospital, ignoring heavy rains and lockdown restrictions, just to check on their mother. Even though they weren't allowed inside the hospital, they waited for hours in the parking lot just to see the doctor and inquire about Bivatu. They knew her condition wasn't going to improve, and yet they came daily to meet the doctor and get some peace of mind that she was in the right hands. Bivatu's condition, unfortunately, continued to deteriorate despite her ventilation support. By May 17th, her organs began to shut down. The doctors were afraid there was not much left they could do for her at this point. After discussing with Bivatu's family, they made the difficult decision to take her off the ventilator. Her doctors stood around her helplessly as Bivatu gasped for air. One of her doctors, Dr. Rekha Krishnan, sensed that she was struggling during her last moments, unable to leave peacefully. Though Hindu by faith, Dr. Krishnan leaned forward and softly recited the Islamic Kalma Shahida prayer into the patient's ear. This prayer is traditionally recited by Muslims at the time of one's death in order to ensure a peaceful transition from life. What touched Dr. Krishnan most was that as she uttered the last words of the Shahida, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, Vivatu took her last breath and flatlined. The way this happened made me feel that someone made me do it, like a divine intervention, Dr. Krishnan shared. If her daughter or a family member was there, they too would have done the same thing. It was not a religious act, but a humanitarian one. The episode had a profound impact on Dr. Krishnan, yet she chose to share it with no one but a colleague of hers, Dr. Mustafa. Dr. Mustafa was moved by Dr. Krishnan's incredible act of compassion and decided to share the story with his family and friends via a Facebook post. Little did either of them know that Dr. Mustafa's post about her would blow up overnight and become viral. Within hours, words of praise and appreciation began pouring in from all around the world for Dr. Krishnan's exemplary gesture of humanity. Dr. Krishnan, though born in Kerala, was raised in Dubai all her life. She grew up in and around cultural diversity as she fasted both for Mandalam, which is a 41-day prayer, a period of prayer and pilgrimage in Hinduism, and she fasted for Ramadan, a month of worship and remembrance in Islam. She knew the customs and practices followed by Hindus and Muslims alike. She says, I was never discriminated against because of my faith when I was in the Gulf, and I returned the respect when I got a chance, she told the Times Now News. Chanting the kalma was a normal thing I would have done any other day if needed, just like a family member.
Thank you very much. That truly does strike a chord. Do you? I'd really like if anybody in the audience would, if you have any questions or any comments regarding this, of course we can see it in the common chat, but if you can unmute and speak up, that would be wonderful. Anyone feels up for it.
Snigdha, that was a really nice, touching story. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. I was just wondering, if you look at, I'm originally from India, as you can tell, probably. If a patient uses home-based remedies and then comes to the doctor because maybe it's not working, and they bring a cultural bias, they bring certain expectations. How do you deal with that as a healthcare provider, where you have to reconcile what they've done before, with these home-based remedies,
Right.
and then provide care, managing that, the bridge between home-based and modern medicine?
Western medicine. Oh my gosh, this is a topic that comes up time and time again. And, honestly, it's sort of an issue. I don't know if it's necessarily an issue, but it is a topic that is continuing to grow in importance. I guess to answer your question, I'm going to share a quick story of something that happened in our clinic where I work. So one of my roles at our clinic is I work with a lot of our diabetic patients. So they come in pretty often, like around every 3 months for a checkup. We check their what's called an A1C, which is sort of their long-term blood glucose levels, to see how they're progressing with their diabetes and treatment. And so one of our patients, our type 2 diabetes patients, she is a woman from Poland. And in her family, she has a family history of diabetes. And, she had been coming in like for a few years, but not really she'd come in maybe like once a year, maybe twice a year. Yeah, and so one day she happened to come in for appointment after a very long time, and we saw her, and so one of my as part of my job, I asked her, oh, so what medications are you taking? Are you taking your insulin? You're taking your metformin and glipizide and all those things. And she tells me, no, I stopped my insulin about a year ago. I started taking a daily spoonful of cinnamon instead. And my face, you couldn't see it because of the mask, but my jaw just dropped. Oh my gosh, you're taking cinnamon. What happened to the insulin? And I asked her like, oh, why aren't you taking it? What made you decide to start the cinnamon? And she says, oh yeah, my sister started doing it and her sugars are so amazing right now. And I wanted to do the same. And I don't know if it was a cultural thing or more just that, they read about it or something. But yeah, I was like, okay. So she gave up her insulin and started cinnamon. She was taking her other medications though. And so take this information to the doctor, our attending physician, and I asked the physician, so this patient, she just told me she stopped her insulin a year ago and she's taking cinnamon instead. What do we do? And the doctor said, okay, let's check her A1C. Let's check and see how her glucose is. So I go and get her blood sample, put in the machine, wait for the A1C to come. And her A1C is surprisingly a lot better than it had been in previous years. Just ironic, crazy, right? Like she had been coming for years and years and was uncontrolled. And somehow in the past year, maybe it was the cinnamon, maybe it was more her diet or exercise, something happened, but her A1C was a lot better. And to that, the attending physician, she said, if it works, it works. I mean, what all we can do as her doctors, as her physicians, is to give her the information and guidance that she needs in order to make the best decisions for herself about her health. And so what we'll do is we'll continue to monitor her and just make sure that she is staying stable at this A1C and that her sugars aren't getting out of control, especially now that she's not on the insulin. And so that's what we've been doing since. She hasn't been on insulin. She's still taking her cinnamon. And, I guess I just really, really was inspired by that attitude that that physician showed in the way she cared for this patient, not sort of neglecting the patient's beliefs, but also, offering that, this is your way, this is our way. Let's bring them both together and let's work together and see what happens. So.
Beautiful story. Very nice. Very, very good story. Thank you.
There's going to be members of my family who are going to, when I get off this, they're going to be, see, I told you so. I've been telling you about
Oh, my mom is probably,
cinnamon for so
all the
long.
family members.
Oh.
Right. The turmeric. I told you about the turmeric, right?
Turmeric, right.
Yeah, the antibiotic. Okay, but I am guilty though. My medicine box here is like full of herbs and everything. I can't remember the last time I took Tylenol. Like I get a cut, put turmeric and coconut oil, and works like magic. I mean, some things I probably won't let go of, but just interesting stuff. Regardless.
Very good. There's a couple of comments along the way that I just want to share. Ali Bhagat, I guess placebo does have a role to play at times. Oh, I'm not going there. And then there's Hari Matali. Thank you. Had another. Well, no, she just came back. Someone right before had said something along the line. Sumner, right? I can relate to that touching story close to how my mom went with a Buddhist monk at her side and letting go in peace. Would love to hear it if you're able to join by voice.
That's
and then there's also a question along the way that says, what was the most unexpected findings in writing this book?
Oh, wow. Man, where to begin? I don't know if this is necessarily unexpected, but one of the biggest things I had trouble with when writing this book was this constant sort of battle of it. And I think once you read the book, you'll you'll see what I mean, but there's at the core of this book, there's this big question. Does it matter that your provider, your doctor, your nurse, or whomever looks like you, shares the same culture as you, speaks the same language as you, right? And so because, at the beginning, we talked about familiarity breeding comfort, and comfort leading to improved healthcare outcomes. But at the same time, we see just as many examples, like for example, with the story of Bivatu and Dr. Krishnan, we see just as many examples of stories where providers are able to provide just as much impeccable and amazing care for their patients, even if they do not belong to the culture at all. And, that was really a question that I had been struggling with as I was collecting research for this book, as I was writing it. And I think it really wasn't until after I had written my first draft of the manuscript that I sort of came to the conclusion it's not really about what one's like cultural appearance or what seems to be one's culture, but rather their willingness and humility to learn about the patient's culture. And that ties into this whole concept of cultural humility.
That
That was
struck me. Yeah, that's something that actually struck me along the way also with your book. One of the things that you mentioned is the repetitive theme that, look, you don't have to be of the same culture to be the culture broker for someone. And there are many examples of how this is done. I think the best one, I think, was the one with medical students who was encouraged to spend less time and more time studying and reading and doing rounds and stuff. And she
part of her
decided,
rotations.
yeah. And then she went to someone and engaged with this old gentleman who was, you tell the story.
Yeah, I won't spoil much of it, but quick overview of the story. Third year medical student, she's on her rotations, she's working in the ICU, and one of the patients she's seeing is a man from China, elderly man, doesn't speak any English, doesn't have family able to stay there with him because of COVID, right? And he speaks a very, very rare dialect of Chinese called Toisin. And there's no one in the hospital who speaks that same language. They get an interpreter, but it's over the phone, and just so many things don't get communicated. And then on top of that, this guy is getting surgery on his jaw because of he has an exposed jawbone because of an infection, and he can't speak. Like, even if he's speaking the language, it's like all that's coming out is like mumbling and like, just unintelligible sounds. And the rest of the story goes on to sort of talk about how this medical student and this patient, without speaking to each other ever, just through the time they spent with each other, just through written communication, pictures, body language, they establish such a strong rapport, and really makes all the difference for him going into that surgery and afterwards. So a pretty touching story, especially given that they have absolutely nothing in common.
And that is common. So I mean, it kind of gives me a little hope. When I started reading it, I was like, well, how are we going to ever find someone with the same background in every single thing? Like, actually, I realized it's not really about someone being of the same exact culture. It's about someone taking the time to explore and help them bridge their understandings.
Right. And like, there's always the problem of, even if you do share the same sort of external cultural background, say like an Indian provider and an Indian patient, you still have a lot of differences. And actually, one of the stories in the book sort of goes into the problems that arise when patients have certain expectations for their doctor because they look like them, and vice versa. And
do you think it's a skill? Do you think it's a skill that can be taught and learned among providers or healthcare workers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is just like any other skill. It's something that takes a lot of, I guess, experiential learning. You really have to immerse yourself and put yourself in situations where you are able and willing to learn from people who are different from you, who carry different beliefs than you. And that takes time, right? You need to really be willing to put yourself in those situations. But like anything, I do believe that it can be learned.
Snigdha, do you, before we come towards our end, any specific folks that you wanted to reach out to?
Sorry, I'm just gonna read through the comments and questions here really quickly. Yeah, a lot of folks are saying cinnamon appears to be helpful.
All
in
right,
diabetes.
enough of the cinnamon, everybody. Oh my
man.
gosh.
Okay, although, yeah, I mean, we won't go there, but got an endocrinologist here. Okay.
Please go ahead. There we go. I'm struggling to get you to unmute. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I just got
There you
it.
are.
Hi,
Okay.
Snigdha.
Hi, Amy.
One of the things that is such a concern in the medical profession nowadays is the limit of time. You have such a small amount of time with each patient, and it seems to me that by using a cultural broker, you could really save a lot of time. It wouldn't be at the extra expense to have a cultural broker in the room.
Absolutely.
I have not finished the book, so maybe you address this a lot, but maybe you could address that now.
Yeah, honestly, the time aspect is such an important one, right? Like, we hear so many stories of patients go in after like waiting for months and months for an appointment. They spend 5 minutes with the doctor, walk out. And, it's not the doctor's fault. It's not the patient's fault. It's really just the way the system is, right? And I guess in order to make most use of that time, if that small limited time is spent trying to understand and I guess like if that limited time is spent just struggling with the communication barriers that exist, then that limited time is gone, right? And so that's where the cultural broker really comes in and makes, I guess, more efficient use of that limited time. I mean, ideally, the long-term solution is to increase the amount of time that doctors spend with patients. But until then, I think this is a good solution. Got Dr. Wu raised her hand.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, thank you very much. I haven't read your book yet, but I've ordered it, so I'm excited and looking forward to it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share, most of my work is taking care of patients with chronic disease. So we do have an opportunity to get to know them over the years. I mean, in particular, people with diabetes, which I think your patient story alluded to. And I want to qualify, cinnamon has laboratory data that lowers blood sugar.
That's awesome to know, actually. That's really good to know.
In very large quantities, but it's actually a good supplement for patients to take. And actually, so is cactus, nopales. We're from Southern California, and so there's a lot of patients of Mexican descent, and that's part of the diet. And it actually has some drug properties that lower sugar. But I kind of just wanted to kind of comment on this cultural broker idea. I think, as medical students, we're taught that you have to take a family history and a social history. That's very, very important. Mm-hmm. And typically when I work with medical students, I send them to see a patient with diabetes. And I think they usually just say, oh, not interesting. I've seen a lot of those patients. And, it's just like, I want to see some really rare endocrine disease, right? And so usually the first question I ask them when they come back is, what does the patient do for a living? And how does the patient spend that day?
Right. So important. Like, are they,
yes.
Like the diet they eat, the exercise they do,
yeah,
the time they spend with their family, even stress, right? Like we
yes,
see
absolutely. Stress is a big part. And so, so I think that whether we come from a culturally different background, I think everybody is going to be different, right? Whether or not ethnically you are the same,
Right.
but your personal experience is going to be different. So I think we strive to understand the disease process may be very similar, but we're not treating the disease. We are managing the patient who is living with the disease, and how they live with it very much depends on their cultural background, their personal experience, and what they're hoping to achieve. And one of the difficulties, I think, with diabetes is that it doesn't often cause any symptoms. So, they don't really feel when the sugars are high, obviously, until things really get to a very serious stage. So it is something that's difficult to engage patients to be proactive in self-care. And so that's, I think, the trick is to how to do that in 20 minutes. I don't think you can. I think you just have to do it step by step and work at it over time. But I'm excited to read your book.
That is
Thank you
amazing.
so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. This is great wisdom for all of us.
So if you want to go ahead and give any last words before we leave.
Yeah, I mean, you've been with me on this journey since the very beginning, ever since I announced this book way back in March, almost exactly a year ago. And you've been so patient with all of my email weekly updates and constant changes, and you've been so willing to share your stories with me and offer your insights and perspectives to be included in this book. And that is really, really so special. And I cannot thank you guys enough for, spending this journey with me and being here to celebrate this today. So thank you guys so much. I want to give a shout out to my teachers who have, throughout high school and throughout college, I mean, this love for science and cultures, at surface level, you don't really, one would think they're quite different things, like science, humanities, so different, right? But no. I mean, and that I feel like my teachers throughout high school, college really made sure to highlight how those two things really intersect and connect with each other. And this book is born literally out of that. So I want to thank you guys for that inspiration. And to my family for sharing all of these amazing stories that honestly I did not know growing up until I sat down and asked them. Probably it's my bad. I mean, it wasn't until I started doing research for this book, I sat down and asked my parents, so why don't you like going to the doctors? And then they started sharing all this stuff. And it was a lot of really, really interesting insights I'd never considered before. And I'm just really grateful that they have, supported this journey, both from, the research standpoint and just like from a motivational supportive standpoint. There were so many days where I was burnt out and like, I don't want to write anymore, or, I'm like so stuck here. I don't know what, which direction to go in. And, I could count on them. Like I could just FaceTime them at any point and they just give me a pep talk. And it was really what I needed to make this book happen. And, to my friends, you've been keeping updated on my social media posts and commenting and giving all that support. And it's been amazing, like letting me talk about the stories with you guys. You guys have been giving me all this amazing feedback and advice. And, it makes all the difference, you guys. This is such a long journey and the support you guys have given is just incredible. So thank you guys so much.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And I've put the links on the chat. And please go ahead and send it to somebody else also who you think should be reading this. This really does help a lot of us and helps bring together things that are intuitive in medicine, but impossible to actually follow through with, including these things. So almost at the end of the hour, I want to say thank you so much to everyone for coming on, for contributing with the comments, some really wonderful comments that I didn't even get to, and
Awesome discussion.
and all the support is definitely truly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Oh,
Thank
one
you.
more thing.
Yeah.
I did announce a raffle. I don't know if you guys all got a chance to fill out the link, but go ahead and do that and we'll draw some raffle winners. And guys, I'm giving out 5 signed copies of the book. I would love for you guys to read it and share your thoughts. It would be amazing if you guys could leave a rating on Amazon or Goodreads and a review if you feel like writing one. It really helps the book to reach the right hands and to reach the right people.
Where's the link?
Here, I will send it. I don't know if I'm not really sure how to pin comments in the chat. Let me try this.
It's right there in the comments. I found it. It's easy. Raffle link is what it says.
There we go.
Hey, congrats, Snigdha.
Thank you so much, Mythili. I'm glad you're able to make it.
Yeah, I like had to get off in between to go give my speech. Then I came right
Oh my
back.
gosh, yes. Good luck.
Thank you. Fingers crossed, we'll see. Good luck. I'm still working on the book. It's right here.
Amazing. Oh, I'm so glad.
As soon as I get through it, I will leave you a feedback for sure.
Awesome. I just love all the photos everyone's been sending me of them with the book and like tagging me online. It's just been so special to see everyone like finally with their copies. Amazing.
Hey, we gotta show off our friend. Like we know a cool friend who's like a famous author now. Like, why not?
Speaking of famous author, you did win an award recently, didn't you?
I did. It was pretty shocking, but so I won. My book won an award in the medical nonfiction category of the Firebird Book Awards, and it was pretty exciting. Not gonna lie, it was just like a pretty cool, validating sort of thing that my book is out there and people are reading it, and deserves that. Deserves to be read. So.
And you have some teachers who messaged that they're very proud of you. I don't know who. There we go. Kind of lost it somewhere.
Amazing.
All right, do you have the entries?
All right, everyone.
Hey, Snigdha, I just want to say congratulations. Sorry, Manasa here.
Thank you so much, Manasa.
Of course. I'm enjoying reading it. I mean, being in the healthcare field myself, I can definitely, connect with the book and, with the whole culture background, being Indian and everything. So, yeah, congratulations. And thank you, Dr. Hassan, for the wonderful talks as well.
My pleasure.
I have been her preschool teacher and I've been with her all the way through. Wish you all the best, and I hope there will be some more books to look forward to.
Thank you, Ms. Manjit.
All the best. So proud of you.
Thank you.
Gulzar is here. Gulzar is here with me.
Oh, hello. Oh my gosh, it's so great to hear both your voices.
I still remember you when you first came. After some time, you joined our school and you went to India. And,
yes.
And you came back, and actually, I still remember your face from that time. Actually.
Oh my gosh, it's been 20 years. You still remember me. That's so amazing.
So proud of you. So good. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We are waiting for your book. As soon as we read it, we'll definitely give our comments on that. Actually.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All the best.
All right, let's draw some names for the raffle. I'm gonna put in my random number generator here. Let's see. All right, first winner, we've got number 15, who is Sumner Layson. I'm gonna put the names here in the chat so that I don't forget and that you guys will know. Second winner, let's see. Number 8, we've got Paula Carrasco. I hope I said your name correctly.
Yes, thank you. How exciting. Congratulations. I'm so
Thank
happy
you so
for
much.
you.
I'm so excited for you to read the book.
Your success. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
I'm
I'm glad
enjoying
you're
your
able to
joy
make it today.
tonight.
All right, winner number 3, number 13, lucky number 13, Miss Rose Hanscom. Hi, Miss Hanscom.
Thank you. I'm so delighted. And I've read the book, but I read it in Kindle. So this will be wonderful.
Nice hard copy. And I will
Yes,
sign it for you.
autograph it. I'm thrilled. Thank you.
And you have to share with Mr. Fickling, of course.
Oh, yes.
All right, number 4, let's see. Winner number 4, number 9, Patricia Wu. All right. I know you just ordered the book, but you'll have another one. And finally, last winner of the day, got number 4, Amulia Parmar. All right.
Great. Awesome.
Shout out to Amulia.
Congratulations.
Sorry, what was that?
No, I was just saying congratulations,
Oh, thank you.
everyone.
Yeah, I'm so excited to, to share this book with you guys and to hear your thoughts about it. And this very
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun, and the support is always wonderful to see.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
right. Bye, everyone.